Dear friends, please enjoy our breathing one more time as we listen to the sound of the bell. Just with the in-breath, just feel refreshed. Breathing in fresh oxygen. Breathing out, letting go. With all respect to our beloved teacher Thai and to our elder brothers and sisters who are with us and with the Sangha and our friends here. This is a happy moment. We are surrounded by, at least I'm surrounded by all my brothers and sisters here. My sister Yu Ngim next to me. And the Sangha has gathered, and on behalf of our teacher who's in San Francisco, we want to thank you for coming to support the Sangha and being here with us this evening. Our teacher's deepest wish has always been to build a community, a beloved community, as he'd shared his conversation with Martin Luther King. But that's our teacher's deepest wish, is to form a family, a spiritual family. And so tonight, sitting here among my brothers and sisters, I think this is one of the few times where we manifest like this to, in a way, continue our teacher as he's not physically here. So we thank you for coming together. This is something our teacher is as always gets nourished by, and so do we. Tonight my sister Yu Ngim, she's my eldest sister. She's asked me to share first, so I will. I try to get her to share first. It's the first time we're doing this, so she was supposed to represent the Dharma, and I was supposed to represent the humor, I guess. Just to let you know that that's, I guess, the intention. I think tonight, just being together already, I think we know how powerful it is when people gather with the same intention to learn, to open up, to really touch something deeper than what we normally do outside. And I think that's the truth that I'm feeling. This evening, the talk we're supposed to share, the theme is stop waiting and start living. It's quite American. You know. When I found out that's what it was, I was quite wow. It's like a subtitle somewhere. But it is, and I reflected on the theme of waiting. This morning we had a walk in the in the park over here. And we sat in front of, I think, George Washington or a statue. And there were people protesting or voicing support for the Syrian people, refugee. And we sat there, I don't know how long, but it was very peaceful to be sitting there and supporting that effort and, acknowledging and being there and contributing our piece, and then sharing lunch. But I had a chance to touch deeply and be reminded that I was a refugee myself, our family. And in 1979, our family escaped Vietnam on a boat with maybe 200, 300 people. And I was maybe 6, 7 years old. So I touched that sitting there in the park, because we heard some of the voice and some of the speech. And we also know that this country is built on that, refugee. We all come from somewhere, but not from this land, this continent. Most of us, at least. So I feel grateful to be here, and I reflected on our time when we were in the refugee camp, my family, and we were waiting for some country to sponsor us. I find out later, as a kid, I was just playing around the refugee camp, throwing rocks and things. We were on an island off of Hong Kong. And just reflecting, like there was this huge warehouse, maybe the size of this auditorium. And each family had little spots of, mats on the floor. And, that was our waiting spot until someone, some country or some place sponsor us. And we were sponsored by a Christian family in Oregon for us to come over. And I think this is, there was a lot of movement back then between the Buddhist community and the Christian community to help. And so many churches rose to the occasion to gather and sponsor one family. And I remember the family that sponsored us, the church, actually is not just one family, but I remember it was many families from that church, and they each contributed something they bought a house for our family, and it was a 2-story house. And they bought it and they filled it up with furniture and food and everything. And I remember opening the cabinet full of food and canned food and all kinds of food. And I couldn't believe how much food was in that house. As well as toys. There was a room full of toys. I think they collected from the other church members. And I remember opening the door and seeing toys. And didn't know how to play some of them, I remember, because they were so new. And the top floor was like maybe 4 or 6 rooms. That was many rooms. And they were my mom and dad, and it was 4 of us. And so they gave us each a room. And I had a room, my sister had a room, my brother had a room. Even though they were little, they each had a room. But we ended up staying in one room. My parents' room. In fact, I think my 2 brothers, I think I did too, slept on this huge bed. And, that's what we were used to in the refugee camp. So that's, sitting there in the park today, these memories of having a place to come back to and feeling grateful. And my mom kept in touch with they call them sponsor. I never actually learned their names because around the house they're just mentioned as sponsors. And this is a beautiful image of people coming together to help those in need. And this is what I remember around the house growing up. My mom, once in a while, would take a trip up to Oregon and meet with our sponsor and many other families. This is so the theme of waiting came up of waiting for a place to come to take refuge in. This is an important theme for me, because it's been a theme for my whole family, my parents, as well as my grandparents. They had to escape China after the revolution. And then my parents escaping America. And then I guess my turn is, my turn to escape America, I guess. In terms of actually growing up in Los Angeles, in the city, confronting a lot of suffering, as well as a young person. In a way, becoming a monk now, I see another way of looking at it is taking refuge, or how should I, a full-time refugee. Yeah? I'm a full-time refugee now, and I'm always taking refuge, and this is a wonderful way to remind myself as I was sitting there in the park. What am I taking refuge in? What am I waiting for? Am I waiting for another sponsor, another country? And as I follow my breath, I realize that what my teacher has taught me is I take refuge in my breath, and taking refuge in the island within myself. And the breath has saved me when I learned from my teacher what the power of the breath. When we simply take an in-breath, conscious in-breath, we become aware of the in-breath coming in. And when we breathe out, we let go. You let that out-breath penetrate. Let it come from every cell of your body. Feel the lightness as you breathe out. And I remember training like that, sitting still in the forest in France, in our monastery, or in the bamboo grove. And remember taking refuge in my breath as I feel the breath enter my body. So every time we take a conscious breath and we bring our mind to the breath, it's a break from all the thinking, all the worries, all the anxiety that we have, that we're used to. We're so used to be thinking and using our mind and being constantly occupied. It's always talking and a lot of stimulation in our mind, that we don't know what it feels like to actually just let it go and just come back to the breath. When we come back to the breath, our mind comes back to our body. Our mind returns to our body. Sometimes we are present with our body, but our mind is somewhere else. And you can see that phenomenon happening more and more. My brother and I, we walk the street from Greenwich, and sometimes we come up and I see all these shops, cafes or places, and place where people come to eat or drink, and I like to peek in there. And without fail, I've been finding that there's a couple sitting there at the table, and it looks nice, but they're both, not present. I mean, they're present to their gadget. I think you're starting to see that phenomenon. And so this is our situation. This is the state where our culture, our society is moving towards. And this is something we need to look at. There are wars and conflicts and between groups and nations, but we also need to look at where we're at in the place we live, in our family. We have to look deeply and see: are we present? Are we present to ourselves? Are we present to our loved ones? This is something that I'm observing more and more. So when we come back to the breath, it's a wonderful place for refuge. When we have a strong emotion, when we have something that's coming up for us, difficult, we always have the breath to return to. Take an in-breath. Take an out-breath. Take a break from that emotion. Take a break from that thought. In. Out. In the monastery, when we hear the sound of the bell, we train to come back to our breath. I tell you now, and it sounds easy, but maybe you do it for a few minutes here, but I'm pretty sure after this event, you go outside, you go back to your, habits and tendency to start thinking again. So the stopping to come back to the present moment, to be in touch with our body as it moves, as it sits, requires training. So in the monastery, I remember in our dining hall, we have a clock that chimes. I remember first being in Plum village, our monastery in France, that it was difficult. Every time the clock chimed and I'm in the middle of a conversation, like after lunch or something, it was really annoying. And I always wonder, and I always question, I was like, how did our teacher come up with this? It's like, it's really, it's a good tool, but it was pretty radical because, the chime is right there in the dining hall, and it was every 15 minutes. And I remember trying to figure out how to make it so it's a little longer. But I think the brothers, I asked permission and they didn't allow that. I don't know, it was like an old one. I don't know, it was all, didn't have options back then, but it was all 15 minutes. But I remember, you're in the middle of a conversation and it chimes and at first you kind of, okay, I have to do it, And so you don't really enjoy it yet. And this is just from a habit of not used to yet the kind of clear, thoughtless mind. You're used to always engage and be in conversation or always thinking of something. It requires training. And I remember I struggled with that in the beginning. So it's pretty typical for us to have difficulty. But throughout the training, as the years pass, I begin to see more the value of coming back to the breath. Especially in meetings, or I would have gatherings and strong emotion will come up. And slowly I began to see the benefit of taking a break, the delaying of continual thought, having a pause. I began to see the benefit of that. So this is one of the refuge that I found that I slowly more and more become deeper for me, and finding different ways that it helps me. So just take a break and train yourself. I sometimes share with the young adults during wake-up school that a restful mind, a clear mind, or a thoughtless mind. It sounds weird, thoughtless. It's like you don't want to be thoughtless, but more and more, I think we're gonna want to, use terms like that, because we're so always thinking. Our culture now, that we don't know what it feels like. And I tell the young people, like, do you know what it feels like when you have a bad breath? Right? After a 6-hour, 10-hour plane ride, and you get off, and you're like, oh. You don't want to talk to anybody, right? And we were not born to brush our teeth, and you learn that, and you learn what it feels like to kind of. So it's something you learn, and you don't want to be near or talk to someone like that. So our mind is like that. Our mind is restless, is angry, it is, full of tension, and we think that's the norm. So I share this because it's a little graphic and like visual and all that, because it tells it, we're so used to of this being full of, stuff. But equivalent is, if you're restless, angry, full of emotion, you don't want to be, what happens? So that I use this example because the young people find it very easy to understand. So training our mind to feel when it is fresh, like a fresh breath, it requires some training, it needs some effort. So sitting down, finding time once a day or so on, to really find that refuge of a fresh mind. You know the word brainwash? I like to reuse that word, People hate to be brainwashed. It's like kind of like cultish and all that. But actually, it's a nice term. Hey, think about it, brainwash. It means like your brain is full of stuff and needs a washing. I don't know. You grew up in your family. I think you know what I mean. Sorry. She's going to save me after. It's a little bit fast. This is a training to be up here for us to share with you, and it's also a training for us. So the topic of waiting. I grew up and educated in California, and as an architect, and studied and wanted to be good and make a name for myself and so on. And I think to have a house and 2 garages, and, the American dream. And my mother and my father sacrificed a lot for their 4 children, my 2 brothers and my sister. They escaped with nothing. They had to leave everything. I remember giving away my toys. And I was like, why am I giving away my toys? And I remember my dad giving away his Honda, And slowly our furniture, we had to do it secretively, so the neighborhoods don't know that we're going to escape one night on a boat. And we left everything to come here. And so I remember there was a lot of push from my mom, especially to be successful and to make and that's a dream of all mothers and fathers. And I see as I grew up, I saw that there was a lot of promotion and a lot of effort to reach you know, the diploma, to become this and that, all the awards and so on, these stickers you get, I forget what they call it, certificates. Yeah, it's quite, you get trained to be like always be somebody. And then you become an architect, you work in and you look and you see whose office is closer to whose and who's got the better project. It's always, and that's the system I grew up in, and I was stuck in that. And I was also, growing up, I had difficulties with my father. He struggled a lot coming over here and losing everything. And so for me, I had a lot of anger issue with my father. And I think this is something that the practice helped me with, to learn to come back and look at ourselves and to really confront the suffering that I was having as a young man. And it helped me become a little happier once the practice helped me look at my father and look at my relationship with him, to begin to understand him more and to begin to understand my own suffering. And this is what was the benefit of sitting, silencing the mind a little, calming, and having time to look deeply at my emotions, where I'm at, and the goals that I'm setting for myself. This helped me to understand more of what true happiness was. Once I was able to touch a little bit of the root of my suffering, I was also able to touch also the things that I'm passing by because of some future promise, to become this, to become that, always wanting more. And I think it's a kind of suffering, always thinking that you're lacking. And this is something that's kind of underneath our culture a little bit. And with the practice, I think it can help all of us to really to recognize that, wow, I'm still alive. That there's my eyes, my body's in good condition. I'm healthy enough. My toothache, my teacher, he shared with us about the toothache. Sorry, back to hygiene, but this moment is a non-toothache moment. It's kind of silly. It's like, what does that mean? But all you need to do is just reflect. Remember that tooth in the back. Remember when it was aching and your gum was inflamed. Just touching that, even though it's not a great suffering, it was suffering. And it reminds us how wonderful. I don't have a toothache now. It's like, this is a practice, just as stopping to recognize the breath, as recognizing a thoughtless, a mind that's clear. It's a training to actually be present to this moment, to this present moment, and to recognize that, wow, the conditions are so many. I remember our teacher gave us homework to write down all the wonderful condition that is in the happy moments in your life now. And it's a wonderful exercise. And your loved one, your brothers, your sisters, this is all something. Sometimes we're there with our loved one, but we're not present. So my brother made us some tea. Before coming here, we're hanging out at somebody's place. And, he brought his tea set and he made one of my brother, three of us, tea. And I recognized, wow, we hadn't had tea for a while. And we sat there and drank tea together. And to recognize that, my younger brother is so sweet. He brought his tea material, and we had just woken up from a nap, and the first thing he does is make us tea. And I was reading a book or something, and I closed it, and we look at each other, and we're drinking tea. I mean, that sounds like really, what does that have to do with my happiness, my career? But that moment actually is the building block for the rest of that's your living. So sometimes we put a lot of goals and a lot of things that we want, but actually when we get there, we want more. I'll give you an example. Like you have a teacup, you drink your tea, and you want to do the next thing. When you get to the next thing, you want to do so on. And this is the way we've been trained. And this is where we're at as a culture. And we need to look. So when I say we all will become refugee, I think in my lifetime we will see that we will all become refugees. And it's a kind of different thing. It's not about one nation and another, but we will all need a place where we can escape a little bit of all that online and Wi-Fi and this stuff is everywhere now. And we have no time to be with ourselves and to be present for our body, be present with the moment, and to enjoy life as it is in the now, to be present with our loved one, and to be present with nature. This is where we're heading on. Besides the climate change and all this, there's something happening to our culture. We're traveling around the world. We see escalating faster and faster. And so I hope you continue to train to find a refuge within, a refugee camp within. We all will need that. When you have strong emotion, or when you need a break, or when you feel out of touch with what you need to do, come back. Everything you need, everything you have is there. And it's only from that place that we can help change where we're at as a society, as a human on this planet. If we keep struggling, fighting like that, but we don't have this refuge, then it will be difficult. My sister, Yungim, will continue on this theme for us. Please take a breath. Come back to that refugee camp inside. We all need a refugee camp once in a while.
There are times where I wonder, why can I not go back to my refugee camp, or this place in me that I like to call home? Why can I not go back home? What is preventing me from going back home to myself? When my mind and body are in the same place, I feel at home. I've been fortunate enough to always have a roof over my head, to have a home, but I've not always been home. I'm not always home. I was reminded of this as I walked to come here, and I saw many posters saying, "Bring him home, the Martian." And I thought, yeah. And when they bring him home, will he be really and truly home? Will he find his true home? So I reflected on that. My true home, as my brother said, brother Phap, brother embrace, said, really truly home with ourselves. Many years ago, there was a lady from Austria that came to Plum Village. And at the end of her stay, at the end of the retreat, we asked some friends to give some input how it had been for them. And this lady said she came to Plum Village because she had read somewhere Thomas Merton's words that said, you can see Thich Nhat Hanh is a monk by the way he closes a door. So she had come to watch us closing doors. Yeah. We didn't know. Maybe just as well. However, she must have been impressed because she was scheduled to stay 1 week and she stayed 2. So closing a door, and for me that became like a practice. How do I close doors? I think we all have doors somewhere that we can close, either well, this is a swing door, so open it if you like, but closing door or opening a door by taking the knob, turning it or the handle and pushing it down and pushing open the door. So it's very interesting to observe, how do we open a door and how do we close a door? It's just a door. But it is a wonderful way to bring us back to our home. To put our hand on the knob, to feel the knob in our hand, already brings our mind back to our body. So I turn the knob or I push the handle down, and I'm aware of how much force I use to open the door and to close the door. So if you don't have time to sit and breathe, maybe since you're going through the door anyway, you can make that your practice of going home. But coming home also is something else, like coming home to that place where it's quiet. I've noticed here in New York it's quite noisy outside. Huh? And as I was walking, I came here on foot. I thought, yes, it's very noisy. Yeah. But let me see. If I just let the noise be, then is it then quiet? Yeah. And I realized I'm thinking. And sometimes I find, even if there's no noise around me, it's quite noisy inside. Maybe the most noise is inside, the outer noise not so much. And when I listen to this noise, I see most is just unuseful thinking, not helpful at all. Yeah. And then I think, okay, can I close a door? Why am I thinking so much? I've just come out of a meeting and I carry things out of the meeting with me. I've already closed the door, right? Physically. But in my head, no. Why did she say this in that way? Why didn't she flow along, etc.? The meeting was closed, but not everywhere. I continued the meeting in my head. So, close the door. The meeting is over. Close the door. And then, as I close the door, it's the same as opening a door. It means new possibilities, new challenges, and can I be there for the possibilities and for the challenges? Maybe we can close the door for a moment with the sound of a bell. Just close the door and enjoy an in and out breath, and just let the world be for one moment. Closing the door as we hear the sound of the bell, or as we stop for a traffic light. Closing the door when we leave the office. One retreatant came, she would like to have a consultation, and she said, my problem is, I feel I'm married to my husband's business. So that when he comes home, he brings the whole business with him. And of course, when we come home, there may be something that happened in the office we want to share, but it was not just that, like something is shared and this is how I feel about it. It was all about the problems and about the things, only business, business, business. He said, I think I'm married to a business. So when we close the door of the office and we go home, and when we open the door of our apartment or house, and we close the door behind us and truly close the door, then we can be truly present for our loved ones, for our children, our partner. We can be there. We can share with them from our heart, and we can listen with our heart, and we can enrich each other's lives. I am of Irish and Dutch descent, of Irish mother, Dutch father. And it took me a while when I started to go. We lived in Ireland and then in the Netherlands. It took me a while to find out where I belonged. It was kind of a little bit uprooted. Am I Dutch? Am I Irish? Inside the house it's Irish, outside the Dutch it's Dutch. Where are my roots? And if we want to live, we need to have roots. Trees have roots. If you cut a tree from its root, it won't continue to live. Rivers have a source. If we cut the river from the source, the river will stop living. So if you want to start living, we also need to nourish our roots, our ancestors. So I would say stop waiting and start living, also in a way of start celebrating life. Celebrating our ancestors, our blood ancestors, our adopted ancestors, our spiritual ancestors, our land ancestors. To bring them, to reconnect with them, to be nourished by them. We cannot take our ancestors out of us. Our youngest ancestors are our parents. They are our ancestors. We cannot say, I have nothing to do with you. No, we have all and everything to do with them. We are their continuation. All our ancestors are within us. Connecting with them inside of ourselves, to recognize all their strengths they have transmitted to us, and also all their weaknesses, and to nourish their strengths and to take care of their pain and suffering, of the wounded child that was in them as well, and that is now also in us. It is not just our child, our wonder child. When we say our, we mean all our ancestors. Yeah. So, to connect with our ancestors. In Plum Village, we have Ancestors Festival, where we honor our ancestors and where we express our gratitude to our ancestors, recognizing that we are their continuation, they are our roots. Yeah. We all may like to look into our ancestors and find ways to celebrate our ancestors, to celebrate our roots, in order to find stability, in order to find freedom, in order to be able to be truly there and truly alive for ourselves and for our loved ones. I know that in New York you celebrate St. Patrick's Day much, much bigger than in Ireland I've ever seen. I think there are many, many Irish people here also, maybe also refugees, but staying connected to their roots. You know. In this way, our roots are a tradition. You know. A tradition can be renewed, refreshed, but a tradition is also our refuge and our roots. So celebrate. In Plum Village, we celebrate also the earth. We celebrate spring, Daffodil Festival. We celebrate Plum Blossom Festival. We have Full Moon Festival, the solstice. You know, there are roots we share, all of us, and we can celebrate together. Let's celebrate a moment together by just getting in touch with our roots. You can just close your eyes and see our roots as the earth. We are part of the earth and everything that's in and on it. Although we do not have roots like a tree, we are rooted in the earth. We have come from the earth. The earth is also our roots with all and everything that's on the earth. So let's just for a moment connect with our roots of the earth, with our land ancestors, our spiritual ancestors, our adopted ancestors, and our blood ancestors. We, the monastics, we are rooted in the Plum Village tradition. Yeah. We celebrate every breath. We celebrate every step. Whenever we walk, where we walk on the earth with love and with compassion. We walk as if we're kissing the earth with our feet, even here in New York. As I was walking, I was kissing the earth with my feet, saying, "Dear earth, we love you. I know we have covered you with stone, with asphalt, with tarmac, with a lot of things. We love you. We are here for you. We want to be here for you because you are here for us always." And this walking gave me stability and gave me freedom. As I was aware of my steps and felt the contact between my feet and the earth, I created some space inside. I created some silence inside. Space to be there. When our heart is small, Thai says sometimes it's like a peanut. I think sometimes my heart is like a mung bean. There's no space for anything, neither for myself nor for anybody else. But walking like this, my heart open, and there's space. There's space for everything I meet, for everybody I meet in the street, and I can smile. So we walk like this. It's our route. In the early years, in the early 1990s, friends of Plum Village, practitioners, they went to Vietnam and they visited Thai's root temple. And as they were walking there, they practiced walking meditation. And a young monastic, a young novice came up to them and said, "You must be from Plum Village." And they said, "Yes, how do you know?" And he said, "I can see it by your walking." It's our roots, our spiritual roots. It's our walking, our breathing, our listening, and our speaking. We listen to ourselves with compassion to others. We speak lovingly. We learn how to truly love. How to truly love, how to offer compassion, how to be loving and kind, how to share our joy, and how to embrace each other with equanimity. That is true love. And we learn how to be truly happy, as my brother already said, not running after things, but to see that we have more than enough conditions to be happy already. Yeah. We do not need that other ice cream. Not the coffee, although we had coffee before we came here. We can have coffee, but it's not because we think we don't have enough conditions to be happy. It's to enjoy the conditions for happiness we have. So celebrate our spiritual roots, whatever our spiritual roots may be. Discover the beauties, everything that contributes to our own well-being, the well-being of the others, and the well-being of the world and the earth. Celebrate, connect, and we can do this all together. I think my brother wanted to add something to this. I'm his, what do you call it, souffleur?
She's giving another chance to share something?
Yes, please.
So I'll take this opportunity and I'll stop being nice. I think our teacher, he was a radical monk. He grew up in the time of war. He saw, the French come and then the Americans come. This is what produced this practice, this tradition. A classic image is a monk is not sitting in there praying and doing the gong and hoping that there will be a better world that we can be reborn into. But he stood up and he gathered the monastics and as well as his elder monks and venerables, and they went into the villages to help. They actively. So this is what has moved our teacher, and now he's come to the West and he's seen some of the roots of why those wars happen. And I just want to just throw that out there, as we've been around our teacher, you see, it's like, people ask, why are you guys speaking against war and going out there and like going to the warring countries and, doing what your teacher did? And there's it's a real teaching to ask and to keep that awareness. It's like, why is Thai keep teaching us to breathe and smile? I was like, what is that? Some people say that's light Buddhism, right? Like, what is that, you know? Yeah, it's a real challenge for our community as we struggle between engagement and also not losing ourselves. Because the war starts when we've lost our roots, we've lost our refuge, that we are not happy with just being alive on this planet. You're going to die, you know. I mean, the war will go on, you're going to die, you know. And so our teachers teach us to really come from a deep place. Of course, do the social change, do these activities, but don't lose those deep moments for yourself. And to do it together. And this is our teacher's challenge to our next century. I think maybe some of you have heard our teacher sharing and commenting on the last century as a century of individualism. You know, everyone, me, and my nation, my people, and so on. And it's caused a lot of stuff happen. Yeah. And so a teacher is really emphasizing on the collective. And it's tough to be on a collective part of this community, you know, it's not easy. You have to conform and you have to be like the rest and kind of lose your identity. I'll just tell you some of the truth about it. It challenges every LA seed in me to oh man, I want to go out there and change LA, you know, and the brothers say, no, you're going to go, you know, breathe and walk in the woods, you know. Sorry, my sisters and brothers. So it's a challenge to be part of a community. It is, because it goes against everything I have rights, and especially when you're right. You know, and you have to and this is the root of war. I'm right. And to live in the collective, to live in a community, you live in a family, you know that. There's a small little community there in the family, around the kitchen maybe, around the dining table. I was witness to that. Because we're not able to let go and see that, come on, it's just... So this is the training for us to learn to let go of our own ideas, our notions, of what is right, what is wrong, what is just. Sometimes even fighting for just cause, we cause a lot of suffering. So we have to be careful as we come together and help and remind ourselves to check in with each other, to see that, hey, is this where we want to go? And so this is a challenge our teacher has for our community, for our next, he's famous to have said, our teacher is saying, has a saying that's pretty, I haven't heard anywhere, the next Buddha, he said, will be a community. That's very beautiful, you know. You imagine that? You don't look for somebody leading and charging, and, the Buddha will probably do something. But a community that actually deals with challenges, suffering, but it checks itself and it helps each other. And there's a sense of love and understanding, acceptance. Because this is all the energy, all the difficulties that we're facing as a family, as a group of people, as a workplace, right? You look in your company, what are the most challenging things in your workplace? It's all about that. People don't know how to work together and let go. So the collective for us is a challenge, how to learn these practices so we don't lose our center, our harmony within, and then finding ways to build community. Because to resist this other energy, we need to do it as a community. And we need everyone to have this kind of training so that you feel, I don't need another sweater. just because it's a new season, or they change color on me again. Yes. Sorry. I remember it's like it's brown season, it's yellow season. You know, you got to change your whole wardrobe just because they say so. So they know. I don't want to say they. You know, it's like a bunch of us. Maybe some of us are in advertising and media now. But you know, they know how the mind works. And if you don't know how your mind works, and if we don't come together, we're just, you think you're free? So I'm sorry to kind of let it out there, because this is the last chance. But this is what I've learned from my teacher, and I just wanted to share with you. We need to come together and really resist this, all these temptations, these kind of temporary pleasures, these moments, right? More consuming, more stimulation, entertaining yourself, more. This is what is happening. And we need to find ways to come together to resist. So have a refugee camp, but do it together. That's the addition I think my sister was inviting me to add. Yeah. So not just you alone on the island of a refugee camp, but bring friends, make friends, come together and make that island and expand. And if we can do this together here a little bit and a little bit around the planet, I think I'm pretty hopeful. I think, and we need to keep that. Don't let it drag you down. We were at the Huffington Post and we learned that they have a department for good news. And yeah, it's pretty cool, huh? And I asked them how. So what do you guys do? Make stories up? Because I don't see any good news in the news. And they say, yeah, and they shared, we met with a small team, and they shared that actually they look at stories that are out there and they try to find something positive and they go do more research. And that's beautiful. And I was removed there was like 4 or 5 in that department. And that's their work. And we need to do that. We need to do that in our family, within ourselves. Look at, there's something happening that's good for today. And accentuate it. Do it in the family, do it at your work. Please do it in your work. It's tough, and it's tough to work at a hard place, but do there. And then create your work, become a community, you know. And then begin to come together, build a sangha. Sangha is just a group of people coming together to remind each other with the practice. And so this is our teacher's deepest wish, to have a bit around every place, and for us to remind ourselves and remind others. And thank you. I believe there's something. Is there? Is there any questions? Oh yes, we now open the mic for any questions or any comment, or I think there's a microphone around. I think there's some brothers and sisters who will come up here to join us to add different perspective. Is there a mic around? Yes? Yes, you can come up here if you'd like to share or make a comment. Oh, they have a mic right there.
I just wanted to thank you. Gratitude for sharing your love and your light with us here, and bringing your stories, your honesty, your experience, your humor. Really grateful for that. It's really refreshing to embrace the reflection that we all know that we have within us, and to see a collective, as you say, this community that does exist. And I just wanted to say thank you. I'm really grateful. And congratulations.
Sister Yeongim and my brother Phap has joined us. And they will take personal questions too, so yeah.
Questions from the heart?
Yes, questions from the heart.
Hi, welcome. I'm actually new to the city. I'm from Philadelphia area, so I drove up this morning, 3 hours. I took the back roads. And I go to Well Springs Unitarian Church, and every Sunday I'm blessed to have a quote like this up on our screen by Thich Nhat Hanh that leads us into meditation for 5 minutes. All you need to enter heaven on earth is one conscious step and one conscious breath. And I really appreciate this opportunity to be here with you. And my question, it takes me a long time to get to my question, is as you talk about refuge inside and refuge in community, I am blessed to have a small community that really is building a mindfulness. It's probably the most rapidly growing Unitarian church in the country, which is tremendous because it's very open spiritually. And we embrace a lot of things, including Thich Nhat Hanh's mindfulness. How can we, I'm sure everyone in this room is from a different place, in our society, in our jobs that are not sitting mindfully all day long, how can we bridge this experience into the world of Wi-Fi and phones? Thinking of myself last night when I was on my phone with my boyfriend at the restaurant. And how do we actually try to do that more?
So dear family, life's full of surprises. I stood up to walk off the stage to stretch my legs. And I was invited, is the kind way to put it, to be part of the question and answer panel. So I'm very happy to be sitting here. And as I received that invitation to be part of the question and answer panel, I realized that as a practitioner, the most central practice for me is to learn how to say yes. Not only to say yes with my mouth, but to say yes to the experience that I'm invited to have in this moment. To look at the places that I close down or the ways that I try to manufacture this moment into something that I believe it should be. In our tradition, in the Plum Village tradition, we practice what we call engaged Buddhism. And we've all heard the stories about going out to bombed out villages, building schools, doing flood work, relief work. We've done all of those things, and we do all of those things. And yet at its core, engaged Buddhism means choosing to engage with this moment, whatever this moment is, as a moment of practice. We're coming into the Jewish New Year, and I'm thinking of somebody called Viktor Frankl, who wrote in Man's Search for Meaning something that we also find to be true in Buddhism as well. We can't always or very often choose our circumstances, but as human beings, the one choice we truly have is the choice of how we respond. So when we say that we can't sit all day mindfully, why not? What does mindfully mean? Does it mean we need to go to a mountainside or go to a cave or a hut, a nice retreat hut somewhere? That was my view of what monastic life is, or the life of the practice, and it's only ever happened once in 20 years. How do I use this moment as a moment that I can be fully present in my body with the experience that I'm having with the person who's in front of me? Can I choose when the phone rings to take an in-breath and an out-breath, bring myself back to my body and pick up the phone? Can I choose to, rather than just run from here to the coffee maker, can I choose to take a few steps with each breath, to arrive with each step? These are ways that it is possible for us to bring the practice of mindfulness to our daily life. So our spiritual life is not something compartmentalized to one side that we do in between things, but it is actually our life itself. So that's the invitation of Engaged Buddhism, to see what we can do where we're planted in this very moment. So this is something that's possible for us. There are some of us, there are a few hundred of us in this room. We're all sharing the same space together. And yet, there are some of us in this room who are thinking, oh, this talk was so interesting tonight. It was so wonderful to hear from a half Irish, half Dutch senior disciple of Thay and our brother Phap here, who has so many interesting experiences. And then there's others who are thinking, I can't wait till this is over. This is, why did I come here tonight? This kind of thing. Some of us are in heaven, some of us are in hell. Who's right, who's wrong? Now, I mean, some of you might think it's a cheap shot, but it really does depend on you, doesn't it? It really does depend on our mind and the way we interpret things. So I invite you to look at that. I invite you to engage with that practice and see if it's possible for you to make just a small change. Not 10 small changes, but a small change in your daily life. Good luck.
We breathe.
I want to thank you for being here, and I'm really grateful for your presence here and your presence in the world. And I think about if there was a beloved community of more people like in this room, how much empathy and how much compassion could really be present in the world. And you've in a way answered what my question was, but someone like me, I feel really overwhelmed when I read the news. I feel really overwhelmed by, for example, what's happening to our brothers and sisters in Syria. How do you balance being internal and having compassion internally and balancing that with being engaged in the world and as something as small as keeping up with the news that could easily feel overwhelming? And I know we have really beautiful examples with Thich Nhat Hanh and Martin Luther King, and so we can reflect on their example. But how do you find that balance when it's easy to feel overwhelmed by the suffering and the violence and the pain that we know that a lot of people are dealing with? Thank you so much.
Yes, that's a very pertinent question in terms of the amount of information that we should expose ourselves to. The important thing is maintaining compassion in our heart. But more practically, I think our human mind is not meant to actually be constantly bombarded with so much suffering. You know, you hear it in your car or your subway, you're driving here, you hear it in the morning, you hear it when you take a break. In the afternoon, you hear it. I mean, when I was driving in LA, an hour and a half to work in the morning, I listened to NPR because people said I should be informed. I have friends from Berkeley, you know, and you know, every time they come back, they always ask me to go to, what do you call it, those picket things. They were good, but it was my way of getting out of my anger now that I remember back. So we're so, we put so high on a pedestal being informed, right? You gotta be up to date. But this, I mean, how much more do you want? I mean, you hear it in the morning and then in the afternoon when I'm driving back, it's the same news, but I keep hearing it. Before I even get to work, I'm already angry. You know, I haven't seen the secretary yet, you know, but it is a good question. You have to know how to take care of yourself and question the being informed. How much should you keep inflicting? It's a scar you keep picking. Okay, this is a balance you need to find, each one of us, in our workplace as well as in society. You know, we had a session 2 days ago with it was at the Columbia University for journalists at the Dart Center. They take care of journalists who have to go to conflicting sites or tragedy, and then have to report, and they come back and they can't handle it. So this Dart Center was formed to take care of and bring more awareness to the suffering that journalists face as they come back. It's kind of like vets, you know. And I learned a lot from that, and their Dart Center is trying to bring more mindfulness and wellness to take care of the journalists. Because after you see these images and you've been in places like that, you see the mind needs healing. It's kind of like getting inflicted. And, you know, that's journalists, but we ourselves as readers, we have to take care of that as well. So be informed, be intelligent, but know what you're doing to yourself and what that is causing, because that can also spill out to your loved ones who had nothing to do with it. But because you keep watering the seeds. In our practice, we call we each all have a seed of anger, a seed of discrimination, a seed of blame and so on. And if these keep being watered, and then you become immobile. You can't really be an activist if you are not like solid. So this is something for us all as we want to change and help affect the world in a better way. We also need to take care and nourish our happiness, our joy. So, you know, is how you say, pay attention to the mud, but don't forget to also pay attention to the flower, to the lotus that's also there. So we keep, you know, reading books on, you know, negativity and all the, and it makes you really, you can't move, and your mind becomes tight, and you start actually causing others suffering. So in a way, that's toxic. So nothing is lost. Everything you read, everything you come in through the sense, the eyes, the things you hear, the conversations that I used to have with my friends, they didn't make me happier. They actually made me more angry. And sometimes anger is useful, but I think my brother or my sister shared one time, maybe 5%. but I'm still trying to figure out how much of that energy. I know there's sometimes it's useful to speak out, but how can we do it in a way that has a little bit more understanding, more compassion, more of that sense of embracing the other person rather than So this is what happens when we get informed and it's over our limit. We actually start to cause more trouble than helpful. And this is each one of us through the practice of taking care of ourselves, nourishing ourselves with good news, nourishing ourselves with moments of actually recognizing, taking a walk in the park, recognizing, hugging a tree, watching, sitting there in front of a flower and recognizing that flower. So these are things that I found helpful in my, practice in terms of engaging the world as we travel and we hear people suffering as, I have to take a walk in nature after a consultation or something. I can't do like consultation 6 right away because my mind is no longer present for the third person. I mean, it looks like I'm there, but it's just too much for me. So I'd only do 1, and then I go take a nap, or I, go walk in nature. And this is just the truth of our mind. We're not meant to actually know of everything that's happening around the world. I mean, the internet now, you think, oh, we have access, but look at what it's doing to you. You have access, but you're like, you're afraid, and you're suspicious, you're fearful, and this you cannot help the world in that state of mind. So please, take a look at the balance. We need balance in terms of information. Maybe one last question. Yes, maybe listen to one sound of the bell. Breathing in, everything we need is here and now. Breathing out, we let go. This moment without expectation.
Hi there. It's kind of intimidating talking to you guys, but what I love in the nature of how you spoke today was that you're still embracing that whole studentness about you. Because sometimes when people that don't live in the kind of environment that you live in, I guess speaking for myself, but I have talked to a few other people, there's a way that we can feel not as spiritual or not as worthy. And what I love what you brought here was that you're still learning and that you're still figuring it out and that you're still on your journey. And that's really inspiring to hear, because some of us are a little bit further back in the road on the journey. And one of the things I do is I go into companies, into the dark, deep, scary territory of corporate America, and I try to bring a tiny bit of mindfulness with me. But what you've inspired me to do today is to take it further. Some of the little teachings are some of the things you said, like, and I love what you said about how being right is the root of war, and how we can bring a little bit of nonviolence to how we talk to each other every day by not trying to be so right. and trying to be more compassionate, trying to be more vulnerable, which you guys exhibited today, the vulnerability of showing that you don't know it all, that you're still a student, you're still on your journey. So I want to thank you for that. And to let you know, there are warriors out here working for the same cause. We might not look the same way. That outfit would definitely make me look a lot chubbier, and it would really, really annoy me. But you know, we're out here, warriors on the front line with you and supporting you and loving you from our place. So thank you.
Hi, thank you for being here tonight. I've been exploring the value of mindfulness in organizations, and I was wondering if you could speak a little bit more about the benefits that you see to bringing mindfulness into workplaces. And I'm particularly interested in how it might help to build trust.
Into the workplace and to develop trust. Workplace.
For me, I think being a monastic is something I always wanted to do, but in another way, I agree with my brother, there's challenges. So when I enter the community, I love to do art, I love to sing songs and write poetry, but I've always been asked to do things that is out of the ordinary. It's, it's not my field, it's not my, I feel like it's not in my capacity. But, so recently the Sangha, invited me to join the finance team and to work with, all these figures, and it's not in what I imagine I would do. So I think the practice of mindfulness just helped me to just be present and to take things as they are and not to have expectation or to have, to struggle with it. At first I struggle a lot, but I feel like when I can just come back to my breathing and just to be what it is, I can just let it go. And whatever comes, I learn from it and I build my experience on it. So I think that in the workplace, we can apply mindfulness. For instance, when I'm working on something that is very challenging for my brain work, then I just take a deep breath and come back and smile and take a break. And we have the time out on the screen. So sometimes, or a bell, mindfulness that we install into the PC or the computer. And we just take a break, close our eyes and breathe and then smile. And I find that also working in a team or in a group is very helpful because I see that I have my brothers and sisters who are experienced in finance and they have all kinds of experiences. And when we come together, we really make things work without, one having to think too hard. So I think that try to learn from the experience of the others and be mindful, be open, and things can become easier that way rather than taking on everything on ourselves. And also create a space for nurturing brotherhood and sisterhood. In our monastery, when we have at Blue Cliff, when we have finance meeting, I'm always the tea master. I make sure I prepare tea, I bring some snacks or cookies or some healthy snacks. And then we start the meeting that way. We don't just start by saying, okay, what's the agenda? Of course somebody would say that, but I will always do the tea part first. And it's so light and nourishing, and then people feel like, oh, there's a connection. You are here for being together. It's just not just about trying to work something out or trying to go forward with the result. So I think that teamwork and nourishing brotherhood, sisterhood, and to build like the energy of mindfulness to share that together is very helpful.